Last year, I was super unhappy at my job, so I decided to quit and take a little break by traveling to Europe for a month. And that's when I stumbled into this company called EF Ultimate Break that would allow me to travel solo but in a group setting so I would feel way safer. I was super scared about traveling solo for the first time, but I sucked it up, got on a plane, and went to Europe. Our first stop was in Madrid. I had a couple of days to kill because I had gotten there a few days before the tour started. The city was super beautiful and walkable, so I just spent my first few days just wandering around and taking it all in. Then it was time to check into my first hostel and meet the tour director for the EF trip. I was the first person to check into our room, so I got to pick my bed and then I just waited for the other travelers to arrive. Everybody showed up at different times since we were all coming from different parts of the country, and then later that night we had our welcome dinner where we all got to meet each other. On our first official day of the trip, we did a walking tour of the city of Madrid, which included pit stops in Plaza Mayor, Puerta del Sol, and the Royal Palace of Madrid. We also had a quick visit to the Reina Sofia Museum to see some of Picasso and Dali's works, but they would not let us film inside the museum. We did have some free time during our last couple of hours in Madrid, so we ended up eating a lot of tapas. The next day, we hopped on a coach bus and headed to Sevilla. On our way there, we did make a pit stop in the medieval city of Toledo. This place was absolutely amazing and it looked like it came right out of a storybook. We paid a quick visit to a local sword shop where they put on a show for us and explained how they make their famous swords. I even bought a mini sword for myself. Then we did a walking tour of the city and had about an hour for lunch before we had to be back on the bus. By the time we got to Sevilla, it was already late and we had already been on the bus all day, so we checked into our hotel and went straight to bed. The next morning, we did a walking tour of Sevilla, which is by far my favorite city in all of Spain. We started by visiting the Plaza de España, which is this famous landmark that you've probably seen all over social media. Then we visited the Royal Alcazar, which is this crazy palace that was featured in Game of Thrones. If you only have a few hours in Sevilla, you have to come see the Royal Alcazar. I loved it so much that right after our guided tour, I went back by myself just to walk around and get some pictures. Then later that day, our tour director Sofia asked if we wanted to do a river cruise, and of course, we all said yes. We hopped on the boat right before the sun started to set, and the boat ride was so beautiful and we all had a ton of fun. The next day, we had a free day in Sevilla, so I took the opportunity to go shoot some content. I went back to Plaza de España to get these shots, and then I just walked around the city looking for some food. I found this outdoor food market and they had Brazilian food, which I was really craving since I hadn't been home in about a month. Later that day, me and some of the girls climbed up the tower of the Sevilla Cathedral to get one last view of the city before heading to Granada the next morning. The bus ride from Sevilla to Granada was about 3 hours, and we made a quick stop in Cordoba along the way to see the famous Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba. We toured the landmark and then had about an hour to explore the city and get some lunch. Cordoba was so cute and picturesque, and I do wish we had more time to explore the city, but we were on a schedule and had to get back on the bus to go to Granada. If you ever decide to visit Granada, the tip that I have for you is leave the massive luggage at home. My 2 suitcases were no match for the streets of Granada, and I had a rough time hauling my bags up the hill to our hotel. Later that day, EF had an optional excursion to visit the Alhambra, but I decided to go by myself because I wanted to take my time there. I got lucky and bought a last-minute ticket, and it was absolutely incredible. The palace is amazing, and the views from the top are breathtaking. I also saw the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen from the Alhambra, so I definitely recommend that you go visit. At night, we went to a flamenco show and then stopped at an observation spot to see the Alhambra lit up before going to bed because we had an early bus ride to Valencia the next morning. Valencia wasn't my favorite city that we visited, but that's probably because we were there for less than a day. We did a quick tour of the city on the bus and then checked into our hotel. We basically just had one night there, so we got some dinner with our tour director and walked around for a bit. In the morning, we left early for the last stop on our tour, Barcelona. That bus ride took about 4 hours, so we all had the chance to catch up on our sleep. As soon as we got to Barcelona, we stopped for some lunch and then went right into sightseeing. We did a quick bus tour of the city and then we got to visit Park Güell. Here's me having my cheetah girl moment. After that, we had the rest of the day to ourselves and I was pretty tired, so I decided to just stay in. The next day was a free day in Barcelona, so I went out by myself to visit the Sagrada Familia, which I've seen before but never had the chance to go inside. I got tickets online and it was totally worth it. I spent a few hours there and then continued with my Gaudí day by visiting Casa Batlló. As a former architect, this was one of the highlights of this trip for me, and it's a wicked cool activity, so I definitely recommend it. For the rest of the day, I walked around the Gothic Quarter, and then later that night, we had our farewell dinner, which was very emotional. We got to have one last meal with our tour director and the entire group of travelers that I had spent the last 10 days getting to know. This was my first solo trip with EF Ultimate Break, and I loved it so much that I decided to become a brand ambassador for them. If you're looking to go on a trip like this, make sure to click the link in the description and use my personal code for a $100 discount on your first trip. Let me know what you thought of the Spanish road trip tour in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.